would trade that for anything. And
Right
I'm
on.
sure that includes you.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Now, of course, you have the Bill Monroe Reader down there that you brought with you, and your new album, which is sensational.
Well, thank you, Bill.
I heard the word that you're writing the biography of Bill Monroe.
Yes, sir. I've worked on it for about 17 years.
17 years.
Recently finished, and it's going to be published by the University of Illinois Press in the spring. So they tell me.
Well, I'm looking forward to reading
I
that.
am too, buddy. I can't hardly believe it at
You
this
probably
point.
forgot half of what you wrote,
Well,
17 years, right?
Yeah, there's a lot in there. I hope people will enjoy reading all about it.
You were with Bill Monroe and on the Grand Ole Opry back when it was in the Ryman.
Not exactly.
Really?
Bill.
Oh, I guess it was the 70s. Yeah, you were in the new Opry House. That's right.
Yeah.
It was the 70s where they converted.
But
Right?
we would go back there every once in a while.
Yeah.
But-
Well, of course, when they refurbished it, you
yeah.
went back there
We
too.
went back there, yeah.
But what would it be like on a Saturday night at the Grand Ole Opry with you and the Bluegrass Boys and all of the madness going on backstage?
Oh boy. All of the bluegrass bands rehearsed in one dressing room backstage at the Opry House. So you'd have Jim and Jesse in one corner going at it full blast, and another corner Bill Monroe and the Bluegrass Boys rehearsing, and maybe the Osbournes would come in and work on what they were going to do, their special, or Wilma Lee was in yet another corner. So it was pandemonium, but we got used to it after a while, and Bill would be really in his element right there,
Oh, yeah.
pontificating and drinking coffee, and he enjoyed sugar really with coffee. And you'd get him a cup of coffee and he'd have 6 or 7 sugars in it.
Monroe had 6 or 7 sugars.
Yeah.
And he lived to a ripe old age.
Believe it or not, yeah.
How about at Bean Blossom itself? I'll bet you have precious memories there and how they linger.
Yes, sir. The first time one of my most precious, I was a new bluegrass boy, and I was really concerned about how well I was doing, and I thought I was not doing well. I was really worried about it. And he was on the bus, and I don't know, how many have been to Bean Blossom? Very few. Well, there's quite a distance between where I was near the stage and where the bus was parked, and Bill was on the bus, and he sent word for me to come to the bus, and I thought, oh God, here it comes. He's going to let me go. So I walked back to the bus with my head hung low, ready to be let go. And there he said, I want you to come up here a minute and sit down. My wife and my best friend, my best man, and a lady friend of my wife's had come to the festival without me knowing it. He hid them in the back of the bus, and when the time was right, he brought them forward. It was wonderful.
Oh, isn't that?
What a rascal.
Yeah, what a rascal indeed. My goodness.
That was Bill Monroe, too.
We should explain, if you don't know it, Bill Monroe had a country music park in Bean Blossom, Indiana, which is not far from Columbus, Indiana, and is south of Indianapolis. You say Nashville, Indiana, and that really screws things up.
Yeah.
It's right near Nashville,
Don't say
Indiana. And it started out as just a Sunday-only thing, where you would have a bluegrass band and a guest band from Nashville, and then it expanded into this 4, 5, 7-day Bill Monroe Bluegrass Festival. And Bean Blossom is still going on, and it's been refurbished, and there's a Bill Monroe Museum there, and
Yes,
I think they have about 3 different festivals a year.
Yes, sir, at least. Yeah.
Have you, since Bill passed, have you appeared up at Bean Blossom with any other configuration?
Well, I worked there with David Davis one time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I think that's the only time.
Brought back real memories too, huh?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And then they had this wonderful old barn, which unfortunately they tore down.
Yeah.
Where
The county made them do it, basically.
really? Was that Pasture?
It was unsafe, yeah. It was either refurbish it or tear it down, so it was
the
cheaper
old
to tear
Brown
it down.
County barn, yeah. And then he had those Sunset Jam sessions too, which was,
Yeah, every year, in June,
And-
Sunset Jam.
and you got involved with that, I'm sure.
Every time. Yes, sir, it was quite an honor.
What was your feeling the very first time you appeared on the Grand Ole Opry with Bill?
Boy, believe it or not, Bill, it felt really natural. It felt like I'd come home to roost,
Isn't that
so
great?
to speak. Yeah. And Bill, I think on that occasion, Bill happened to forget a verse, and I was able to feed a verse to him. So we carried on.
Yeah, and you and Kenny were very good at that, as I remember. Right.
All right.
Now, the final years he was still on the road, and that must have been very difficult for him because he wasn't the wellest of people, but yet he still persisted to being on the road.
Right. He was determined to continue to play, and of course he had bills to pay. He was the primary breadwinner of the Monroes, and they had a lot of expenses. It cost a lot of money to be a professional musician. I'm sure most of the stars, if you'll ask or you'll check into it, most of the stars are in debt up to their ears, trying to keep going, and Bill Monroe was no exception. So he had to keep working, in other words.
But please buy a record from us so we can buy some gas for the bus, right?
Please buy a record from us.
Off the top of your head, what are some of the recordings that you made with Bill?
Well, the first one, Bill, was the old Crossroads. And then we made an album, Bill's last LP, long playing album, called Southern Flavor, and there was a tune on there called Southern Flavor, and a real good song called Life's Highway, which should have been titled Life's Long Lonesome Highway.
Yeah.
And a song that I helped Bill write, which is called The Days Gone By, is on there too. It's kind of a rare album, but it was his last. And then we did a couple of CD, cassette releases after that.
In a recording session, was he demanding? Was it difficult to make records with him?
Well, yeah, you had to. You couldn't sit down. You had to stand up. Most of the bands record sitting down, and they overdub their parts over and over and over again to get them perfect. With Bill, you were right in the moment. You recorded several different versions. Ultimately, they would electronically fuse them. But with Bill, originally, you would aim for the best take, so to speak, that you could get.
Well, so
There was no overdubbing, excuse me, Bill.
Yeah, he wasn't a take one person. He had to do several takes. Yeah.
Whatever it took to get it
And of course,
to the take.
he's very high standards, no doubt.
Absolutely, yes, sir. He could. It's amazing. I'm glad you mentioned that. He's one of the few people that I've ever encountered who could hear every part in the band. He knew what the banjo was doing, what the fiddle was doing, the bass. He could hear it all. A lot of times when you're in a band, you kind of zone out on your own contribution, or you listen to someone else picking or singing. He heard it all. If somebody was off, he knew he was there. He was on it. Amazing.
That is
I think.
incredible. You probably took some overseas tours with him outside of the United States.
Yeah.
What's the experience like because obviously the people in Europe have seen him for the first time, and you're over there and there's a language barrier, and what was it like, say, performing for the French or the Germans or the...
Well, quite a few of the fans over there love American music of any kind, as you know. And in a bluegrass situation, they would dress up as cowboys and Indians
Well, that's appropriate.
in full regalia and drink beer, which didn't really please Bill that much because he hated beer.
No.
But they had a really good time, and they dressed up as cowboys and Indians, and before we played, they took us to the festival grounds in restored automobiles, like these ones next door here. American classic cars that had been restored in Europe. And before that, they fed us on a meal of steak and potatoes, just like we would have in America.
Instead of their own native food,
Right.
yeah. Of course, you go over there and you want to try some of their native food, and you can't.
Right, can't, no, because they insist that you have to be fed like an American.